Namaste and welcome to Insight UK podcast.
Thank you.
Today we have with us Deep Haldarji, who has been a journalist for more than 20 years and is known for his incisive reporting and in-depth analysis of socio-political issues, particularly in India. With a strong background in investigative journalism, he has covered a range of topics, including human rights, environmental concerns, and cultural narratives. Deepji's work often reflects a commitment to uncovering the truth and giving voice to marginalized communities. He has contributed to various publications and is recognized for his thoughtful storytelling and rigorous research. He is the author of Blood Island, An Oral History of Marichjhapi Massacre, 2019, Bengal 2021, An Election Diary, and Hindus in Bangladesh, An Untold Story. Namaste and welcome, Deepji.
Namaste.
Deepji, would you please begin by explaining the historical context of the Marichjhapi massacre, also known as Blood Island? What is its relevance to the partition and the displacement of Bengali Hindus which followed? And why do we know so little about it?
Okay, so two parts to the question. I think the first question is of continuing relevance because the Marichjhapi massacre took place in the Sundarbans area of West Bengal in the years 1978 and 79. So end of 1978 and roughly the middle of 1979. Now, before I come to what was the Marichjhapi massacre and what happened and why, it points to a bigger question, which is unlike the West, where the partition was a one-time process, 1947, it was a horrific experience, but it was one time, okay, and there was this transfer of population where large sections of the Muslim population moves towards what is now Pakistan, and Hindus who were on that side came over to this side. Of course, we know it was a very bloody experience, but it was a one-time experience. Unfortunately, the experience in the East, okay, between when Pakistan was two countries in a sense, there was a western part of Pakistan and there was an eastern part of Pakistan. So you had a West Pakistan and East Pakistan. It was one country then separated by India. It's two countries now because now East Pakistan has in 1971 separated from West Pakistan and become Bangladesh. Now, what happened in this part is that the partition did not end in 1947. Waves of violence started taking place because not all Hindus, Bengali Hindus, moved at one go. Now, one of the reasons for this is, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons for this is that the first wave of migration that took place from then East Pakistan to West Bengal, okay, were mostly of the upper caste Hindus. But many of the lower caste Hindus stayed back because they had a leader, a political leader by the name of Jogendranath Mondal. So Mr. Mondal was a very big leader, and he was also very close to Ambedkar at one point, and he basically rejected Nehru Gandhi's Congress for Muhammad Ali Jinnah's Muslim League. Okay, and when India was partitioned and Pakistan was formed, so he became the first law and labor minister of Pakistan. Okay, so very few people know this. A Bengali Dalit Hindu was the first law and labor minister of entire Pakistan from East Pakistan. Okay. Now, since he belonged to the scheduled caste, lot of Dalit Hindus listened to him and stayed back. So his basic argument was that the caste Hindus, okay, oppressed the Muslims and also oppressed the lower caste Hindus like himself and like the constituency he represented. So he said that, look, there's no need for us to leave because now our enemy, quote unquote, common enemy is gone. Partition has happened. Our enemy has moved to the other side. So we can now live in peace with our Muslim brothers. However, the experience was something very different because even if there was an iota of truth in what he said, what many lower caste Hindus who had stayed back realized is that now they're being looked at as just Hindus. And when the Muslim mobs were coming to attack them, to take away their land and their women, they did not really make that distinction between upper caste Hindu and lower caste Hindu. They were just attacked for being Hindu. Okay. And interestingly, Jogan Mondal himself got thoroughly disillusioned with what was happening in East Pakistan, and he resigned as Law and Labor Minister of Pakistan, and he moved to West Bengal, where he tried to again, regain his political career, but he failed, and he died very unsung, okay, in West Bengal.
Okay.
But what happened because of this, because of what he had said, and because of the fact that partition did not happen at one go, is that from that side, which is now Bangladesh, until 1971 was East Pakistan, waves of Hindus, as whenever there was this spurt in violence, okay, they would migrate to West Bengal. Okay, now what happened during that period was, I was talking about 78, 79, but exactly if you go back 10 years or so, or 15 years, there was this huge mass of people who had come from East Pakistan to West Bengal. And of course, you couldn't retain all of them. Okay. So the central government decided that there would be this Dandakaranna project,
Mm-hmm.
with Chhattisgarh, parts of Madhya Pradesh, and all that area,
Mm-hmm.
where these people will be shifted to temporary refugee camps, and they will be put to work in various governmental jobs, mostly road building.
Okay.
Now, these people were not construction workers. Most of them were fishermen and agriculturalists. They were farmers and fishermen. Also, this was a completely different atmosphere for them, because it's mostly arid land, and they were used to fertile land and a lot of water bodies around where they could fish. So for them, this was an alien place. So they of course resisted, but they had nothing to do because they had escaped persecution. So they were sent there, and they grudgingly came to Dandakaranna. But interestingly, while they were coming, the left leaders, the communist leaders who were in opposition in West Bengal at that time, told them that, look, this is a very unjust thing that is happening to you. If we
Mm-hmm.
were to ever come to power in West Bengal, we will bring you to West Bengal, okay, from Dandakaran.
Mm-hmm.
So for 10, 15 years, they stayed in the Dandakarana area with that hope that someday they will go back to West Bengal, because West Bengal at least is like East Pakistan, language
Mm-hmm.
is the same, food
Yes.
habits are the same, culture is the same. They can also do farming and fishing. But when the left finally came to power in 1977, they forgot all about that promise, because they have come to power that they don't need to bring back people. They're already in power. Now, these guys sent a delegation to the left saying that you had promised. Almost a decade has passed, decade or more, because people came, like I said, there were waves of migration that took place. So it's time for you to keep your promise and bring us back. Now the left had no reason to do so, so they were completely ignored. But by that time, they had also managed to sort of rebuild their lives in Dandakaranna, because those
Mm-hmm.
jobs they were employed in used to pay them some money. So they have saved up. So they decided, look, we will now go to West Bengal and settle there all by ourselves. We don't need the government. We don't need government support.
Okay.
So they identified an island, uninhabited island in the Sundarbans area, which was called Marichjhapi.
Mm-hmm.
And in the year 1977, almost 1.5 lakh people, they sort of got together and they decided, okay, this is the island we're going to transform into a township. And it was an amazing experience. So they transformed, and they came and they spent sleepless nights in the open, and they came in droves. And mostly all by themselves, they set up a township over the next 6 months in that island called Morichapi. So there were shrubs. They cleared the island of shrubs. They built huts. They built a boat manufacturing yard. They built a school. They built a biri factory. There were huts. Okay, and it was such a grand experiment, that there were people, public intellectuals, poets, from Calcutta, who went there to see, okay, this is happening. A band of refugees who had escaped persecution from East Pakistan, later Bangladesh, and they had come to, somehow managed to come to West Bengal, but they were sent back because West Bengal could not absorb such a huge number of refugees. They were sent to Dandakaranna, but they had lived with that hope that someday they will come back to West Bengal. So they have finally done it by themselves, even when the government doesn't want them to come, and they have set up this island for themselves. Now, this did not go down well with the West Bengal government. Okay, the leftists, they thought that, ek to they have defied their order, that you can't come here, even though we had promised you before that you could come. And
Mhm.
secondly, they thought that this must be a disgruntled batch of people. So if this experiment succeeds, and there are other such small islands in Sundarbans, if say more people in from Dandakaranna keep coming and replicate this model of Marichjhapi, then we will be in trouble. So they were given an ultimatum to clear the island and go back to Dandakaranna. They flatly refused. So over the next around 6 months, starting from December 1977, the West Bengal government, it was headed by Jyoti Basu as the chief minister, he set out its police to first do an economic blockade. A lot of people died without food and water inside the island because the island was surrounded by police launches who did not allow the islanders to go out and get food from other islands. Did not allow the islanders to move out of that island. And then when a public interest litigation forced the government to withdraw that economic blockade, they unleashed their police on them. And women were raped, children were killed, men were killed, bodies were thrown into the river, and a horrific massacre took place. And there was a complete press gag. Please remember, this is 1977-78, so the
Mhm.
media was also not what it is today. There was
Yes.
only state television, and there was, of course, newspapers, but there was a complete press gag. Journalists were not allowed. And it's a little far away from Calcutta. It's almost 5 hours if you want to go, not three 3.54 hours if you want to go from Kolkata, from the southern part of Kolkata. So I think over, and it mostly went unreported. Of course, a few reports were carried in the local dailies, but it mostly went unreported. And uh, I have actually found out survivors of Marichjhapi over a period of 5 years when I was researching and writing the book. And they tell me something around a couple of thousand people died.
Mhm.
Upwards of 5,000 people died during that period in police violence, from starvation, from the atrocities that, and countless women were raped. So that's the Morichapi massacre. It was so when the book came out, Blood Island, uh,
Mhm.
the print which I write for, the print website, they
Mhm.
ran a headline saying that this is a massacre far worse than 84 or 2002, 84
Mhm.
Delhi or 2002 Gujarat. Now, I don't normally sort of talk like that, in the sense that I don't compare one massacre with the next, saying,
Mhm.
okay, more people died here, because, you can't really, according to me, you can't really measure massacres in that fashion. But it so happened that if you were to do that in terms of the sheer number of people who were killed, it is perhaps the biggest massacre in India, which most people didn't know about. So that, in short, is the Marichhapi massacre.
Yeah, like as you said, there was not much social media then. I mean, we know, I mean,
Yes,
till your book, we never heard about, the Blood Island or the Marichjhapi, massacre. We never heard about it. And here were people like, they were punished for being self-reliant and
yeah,
self-sufficient.
yes,
So,
and also according to the left, defying the left government.
that's right.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned in your book, I mean, which is an oral history recorded from 9 people who lived through the events.
Yes.
Um, you interviewed them. So, how do you think the victims and the survivors of the Marichjhapi massacre perceived the displacement and the treatment by the state?
I mean, for them, it was imagine first being persecuted in their own country.
Mm,
Okay. Now, East Bengal, which later became East Pakistan and then is today Bangladesh, was their own land. So they were driven away by persecution. They escaped with their life and limb somehow, right?
mm,
So you
mm,
face that once, then you come to Bengal, and you are told in Bengal, oh, there are too many like you, so we cannot absorb you. So you will be sent to Dandakaranna, place you never heard about, a place you cannot adjust to, because you
mm,
don't speak that language. You have never done road building work. You don't The food habit does not match with yours. Okay. So, and then you spend a decade or more there, and then you find a glimmer of hope, because the left has come to power and they had told you that, okay, you are our brothers and we will bring you back. And then they say no. and then you buy yourself from the money you have saved, and through your sheer hard work, you set up home again in a tiny island. And then this very government, the very people, very politicians, very sort of the known faces which had once assured you of bringing you back to West Bengal turn against you and unleash its police on you to rape your women, kill your children, and to maim you and crush you. I mean, it's like it's being persecuted again and again and again, right? So you're
Right.
persecuted first in East Pakistan, then you're persecuted in West Bengal. So the two Bengals have, in a sense, persecuted you.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was it was the end of hope in a sense to whoever survived Marichjhapi, which is why it was so difficult for me to write the book, and it also took so much time because for me to convince them to trust me with their story was a
Yes.
big thing. I had to go back again and again to them because they saw no point in telling their story to me
Right.
after so many years, because I the book came out in 2019, so 5 years from five years before 2019 I had started writing the book. So imagine so many decades have passed since that happened to them. So they have survived Morichapi massacre, and they have tried to rebuild their lives, whatever is left of it. And then in comes a journalist asking them, what happened to you, why do you think it happened to you? So they saw no point in telling me their story and trusting me with their story, because they simply could not trust anybody anymore. So
Right.
for them, Marichhapi massacre was the end of hope, because how many times can you be persecuted?
Right.
That's why I made a distinction between partition in the West and the East. So partition in the West, however horrific, happened one time. Partition in the East kept happening, and that's the tragedy, that their own people, quote unquote, people from this side of the border, betrayed them. For
Right.
what? Yeah, so for them it was they could not even believe it, that this is happening to them.
Right. And also, I think sharing those stories must have been like reliving the horrors, and
Yes,
probably they
reliving
want
those
to put,
horrors.
yes, and probably they just want to put it in the back, in the back,
Yes,
and
yes.
then,
That
just
somehow
sharing that
managed to,
story.
carry on with their lives, and to remember something so horrific of, women being raped and young boys and girls being thrown into the river. So to again go back in time and try to remember what happened on which month and how they reacted, and all of that was a terrifying, terrifying experience for me. Of course, to even listen to them to what they had to say was heart wrenching, but even for them it was extremely difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, to be betrayed not once, again and again. I mean, it's almost it's never heard of that you can be betrayed that many times,
Yeah,
by your own people.
yeah,
So, yeah. And moving on, you also mention in your book that the Hindu refugees soon realized that they had become humanity's leftovers, given the fact that the leftist state missionary treated the Hindu refugees with absolutely no empathy. So here were people who came escaping to a land where they think their own people live, people of their religion, people of their culture, language, but they encounter a state machinery which lets them down, as you've said.
yeah.
So do you think marginalized communities often become invisible in the larger political narrative?
They do, because they have to be on the right side of the political divide. If you're on the wrong side of the political divide, there's li- there's literally no one to talk about you, tell your story. Like, I'll give you a personal example. So this is a story of Bengal, right? West Bengal. The
Mm.
book is based in West Bengal because Sundarbans is in West Bengal. I mean, part of it is in Bangladesh, but the story I'm telling is from West Bengal. You'd be surprised that the book got very good press, okay, and it became a bestseller. And it was then so many more editions of the book came. It went on to be I wrote it in English, but it went on to be translated in Bangla, in Tamil, in Malayalam. Hindi translation is being done. There is talk of a Marathi translation. So even though the book came out in 2019, still people talk about Blood Island. We
Mm.
are doing a podcast now,
Right.
but there was total silence from West Bengal, where the
Okay.
book is based. So even though there is a Bengali translation, but there's total silence. I mean, there was one big review that came out, which was a positive review, but after that, silence.
Mhm.
And this is our own people, as in people who are Bengalis, people who are Hindu Bengalis. right? But
Yes.
there is this complete silence as if it did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it may have something to do with the fact that for 34 years West Bengal was ruled by the left,
Mm-hmm.
and most of our intellectuals are still inclined towards the left. But but that's fine. That's a political ideology. I'm not attacking a political ideology. I'm talking about a massacre that took place. A
Right.
government, whichever of from whichever formed by whichever political party, but a state government sent out its police to kill unarmed villagers in a tiny island. That's the story. But it is as if Bengalis in West Bengal, you know, they're completely, they don't even want to acknowledge it that it happened, right? So that's the tragedy. Whereas, publishers in Tamil Nadu, people in people in Kerala, they are interested enough in the story to get the book translated in those
Mm-hmm.
languages so that more people can read. So that's the tragedy that these people, these islanders of Marichjhapi, they were betrayed, and they continue to be betrayed by their very own, which is Bengalis from West Bengal. So it's not just the left-run government; it is also the total apathy that many Bengalis, I should not say all of them, many Bengalis feel towards people Hindu refugees who came during that period and face persecution here. But I think there is a general apathy towards Hindu refugees as a whole, from East Pakistan, then Bangladesh. I think there's a kind of apathy and it's very hard to explain why that is.
Right. As if the physical violence was not enough, this being silenced, their stories not being told,
Yes, yes,
this lack of empathy from their own,
yes,
people is another tragedy
yes,
altogether.
yes.
And do you find any parallels or a tragic sense of deja vu from Direct Action Day to 2001 riots to 2021 anti-Hindu desecration of puja pandals and to the current heinous killings and rapes that is happening in Bangladesh?
Yes, you can actually draw a line
Mhm.
from 47, and there are these years that stand out. So from 40, 46, 47. So for Direct Action Days 1946, and so there was Gopal Mukherjee who stood up and who stopped the killings of Bengali Hindus by Muslim mobs. Now those Muslim mobs also came from Bihar. Some of those Muslim mobs came from Bihar. Okay, Muslim rioters came from Bihar. So, but the violence then shifted to Noakhali, which is today in Bangladesh. Okay, and almost village after village in Noakhali was cleansed of Hindus. Killed, forcibly converted, or they had to flee. So there was migration at that point. Then the 47 fresh bout of violence. Then, of course, like I said, Jagannath Mondal, he told his people that don't leave, but the violence did not stop. So there was violence in 51, then violence in 2001 when the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the Jamaat Islami came to power. There was a lot of anti-Hindu violence.
Mhm.
2021, when the Army League was in power, Sheikh Hasina's Army League, there was anti-Hindu violence and a lot of instances in between. And 2024, what you saw post Hasina,
Mhm.
they had to flee to India, but what you saw what happened to Hindus there. There is a direct parallel. You can actually draw a line when there has been a period of political instability.
Mhm.
Hindus had to bear the brunt, and they had to. Of course, Muslims are also attacked. This time, also post into 2024, when Hasina left, a lot of Muslims, including policemen, who were killed.
Mhm.
Okay, they were killed for being close to the ruling party,
Yes.
Army League. But there is selective targeting of Hindus. There are soft targets.
Right.
So whenever there is a political instability, Hindus are soft targets. Now, people say, "Oh no, but Muslims were also attacked." Yes, they were attacked. But it's very easy to attack a Hindu there and get away with it during a
Yes.
political instability. So whichever dispensation is in power, and it
Mhm.
of course gets worse if the dispensation that comes to power do not care for Hindus, okay, or is more radical in its political and social beliefs. But every time there's an instance of political instability, Hindus become soft targets.
And so there's also an ideology which supports Hindus being attacked, like I mean, the
Yes, the
radical
radical
ideology.
Islamists, of course. I mean, they say so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not up for debate because they have held demonstrations, public demonstrations saying so. They have given interviews saying so. So I mean,
Yes.
it's not allegedly anymore. It's there in cold print and it's there in videos to hear for everybody. So
As you said, we've heard we do see quite a lot about the persecution of Hindus in Pakistan, but we've
yeah,
not. I mean, it's only now, I think, probably 2024, we could see a lot of videos
yes,
coming up on social media. Where they were taking out a rally against the Durga Puja being celebrated.
yes, yes,
And some gut-wrenching videos that were coming up of women, being abused. So it's only now because of the social media, where it's no longer silenced. I mean, we do see quite a lot of evidence coming out, about the persecution of Hindus in Bangladesh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
How do
think,
you? Yeah, please
yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry, no, please tell me.
So how do you think the ongoing persecution of Hindus, how has it affected the cultural identity and the long-term effects on social and economic conditions? And what do you think would be a realistic projection into the future? Is there any hope for Hindus?
I think the way this is going right now, it's pretty grim. But I think Bangladesh needs to remember, and now there is an attempt to not remember that. Bangladesh needs to remember that why it became Bangladesh in the first place. It was East Pakistan, right? It had separated
Mm,
from India, and it became the eastern part of Pakistan.
mm,
Now, why did it in 1971 choose to not remain with Pakistan and choose to be a different country with a different idea of itself?
mhm,
Right? So it did so because under Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, at that period in time, they thought, or many of them thought, not all of them perhaps, but many of them thought that their Bengali identity, based on their language, common language and culture,
mhm,
is a bigger identity than their immediate religious identity. So before they were Hindus and Muslims, they were Bengalis. They spoke the same language, they ate the same food. There many of their uh, cultures were different. Like for instance, I have been going to Bangladesh since 2022.
mhm.
Okay, so 2022, 2023, and 2020, 2022, 2023 Durga Pujas I stayed in Bangladesh.
Okay.
And let me tell you that it's very, I sometimes get trolled for saying this, but it was very common not just in the Dhaka city, but also within Bangladesh's villages,
Mhm,
interior villages, and I have
mhm,
gone into far-flung villages.
mhm,
For Muslim women, even burqa clad, and men in skull caps,
mhm,
to come and sit at Durga Puja pandals
mhm.
and very quietly, very peacefully observe what's happening.
Okay.
Okay, they even
Mm,
eat the fruits and the prasads that's given to them. Now
okay.
they may not be eating it as fruit or prasad.
Hmm.
They eat it and they think that there is nothing off about it. Now, where
Mhm,
did this come from? It
mm,
came from the fact that they have lived so close to each other that even if
mhm.
their religious practices are different, the language and the common culture bind them together. Right? So this is
Yes.
this this is the reason why Bangladesh was formed.
Mhm,
But unfortunately, that along with this, there was always in their bloodstream another thought that they have to be more Islamic. And if they have to be more Islamic than they were, then all of this cannot be allowed. A Durga
mm,
Puja cannot be allowed. Sitting in a Durga Puja pandal cannot be allowed. Free mixing with Hindus cannot be allowed. Singing cannot
mm,
be allowed. You know
mm,
how it is.
mm, mm,
So these two ideas of Bangladesh has actually plagued Bangladesh since its beginning,
mm.
right? And
Yes.
Bangladesh's bloody history, political history, bears out this fact that Bangladesh was never fully comfortable with this or that. It
Okay.
was always wrestling with the both with two ideas. Sometimes one won, sometimes the other one. Now, what post August 5, when Hasina left, it's not as if everything was perfect under Hasina. In fact, 2021 was when Hasina was firmly
Right.
in power, and yet there
Mm,
was so much violence against Hindus over a piece of fake news. But since she left, all these other ideas, ideas which do not talk about a common culture, have come up. So if you ask me right now, what does it look like? Right now, it looks pretty grim. But my hope is that somehow Bangladesh will, and this is hoping against hope almost, somehow Bangladesh will realize, like I said, that why it decided to separate from Pakistan and become a different entity. Okay, it was not just a political decision. It was also based on uh, socio-cultural objectives that it wanted to fulfill by separating from Pakistan. I think it has to go back to its origin story. Uh, it has to it, it has to realize why it became what it became. Only then there is hope. Or else, if this is madness, what's happening? It's really bad to be a Hindu in Bangladesh today, because
Yes.
you are attacked just for being a Hindu in Bangladesh. Many people put out the argument that because Muslims are being attacked, also Hindus are being attacked because they are seen as voters and supporters of Awami League, and there's a lot of anger in the country for Awami League. But that's not true. They're
Yes.
attacked for being Hindus. The Awami
Yes.
League comes later.
Yes. Like even in better times,
Because
Hindus
even
were.
in better times, they were attacked for being Hindu.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just an excuse, and they're
It's
always
just an
looking.
excuse now because Awami League is not there in power. Now there's nobody to protect them.
Yes, yes. So it's almost like law and order has collapsed,
Yes.
and yeah, and I mean, as you said, hope against hope. I hope the community, the Bangladeshi community, does some introspection and questions why did they become Bangladesh? As radical Islamism is seeping, into the community so fast.
Yeah.
Somewhere, I hope there is a glimmer of hope that they would introspect of
Yeah.
why they became Bangladesh. And speaking of which, what do you think is the psychological impact on the collective Hindu psyche from the ongoing violence on Hindus, which involves barbarism of unprecedented proportions?
Okay, so I think there is some ray of light there,
Hmm.
because as news have come in of Hindu homes being attacked, burnt, Hindus being forcibly taken away, converted, attacks on women. There have also been this groundswell of support for Hindus who are being attacked, you
Hmm.
know, by Hindus themselves.
Okay.
So whether in Dhaka or in Chittagong or in other places, you must have seen those pictures. There are a
Yes.
lot of Hindus who have come out on the streets and tried to organize themselves. Okay, even as the persecution is ongoing. So I think that gives me a lot of hope, because I don't remember seeing something like this. Like so many Hindus coming out and talking about it. Also, thanks to social media, it's not just in Bangladesh. Like you are doing a podcast with me from UK, right?
Right.
So I
Yes.
think so. This thing is now global.
Hmm.
So even if there is a narrative bias in some of the Western press,
True.
New York Times ran a headline where it spoke about the persecution of Hindus, and that really shook up how the Western world looks at this issue. So
Yes.
now it's a headline. Now you can talk about Hindus being attacked in Bangladesh without people telling you, oh, you are spreading fake news, or you are, not that many incidents of attack took place,
Hmm.
because some of us have been constantly talking on social media, writing articles, doing podcasts, and Hindus on the ground in Bangladesh are coming out in large numbers to talk about themselves, uh, to their fellow citizens, also to the world. And thanks to social media, those images and those videos are reaching everybody across the world. I think there is hope in that at least the issue, unlike in Marichjhapi, which we discussed,
Yes.
the issue is not swept under the carpet. So
Right.
suppose today a temple is burned somewhere, or a Hindu is forcibly converted somewhere, there are high chances that you will, next morning itself, you will, or by the end of the next day, you will have pictures and videos, and you will have people around them talking about it, and that will spread, and news will be carried, or at least social media will be talking about it. So I think
Hmm.
that's very hopeful. So two parts: one, that they are coming out in large numbers and talking about themselves, and B, that some of us are also talking about it and taking it to the world. So I think there's hope there.
Yes, as you said, I did see some videos yet, I think just yesterday, of a huge crowd in Chittagong
Yes, yes,
coming out. And I also remember watching this, this video. I think some youngsters have come up with a song, it's almost like Hindus roaring.
yeah,
I mean, some voices of resilience coming out and reaching out. I mean, in terms of art,
yes,
in terms of books, podcasts, art, and everything. Yeah,
yes,
as you said, there's some hope that there's a global outcry
yes.
from the global community of Hindus. And moving on, Deepji, speaking about you, in these times of derailed narratives, false claims, and as you mentioned, a haunting silence by the mainstream media, you have chosen to share these stories of unimaginable suffering and sorrow. So, what are your final thoughts on what lessons should have been learned in the past, and what lessons should be learned in the present, perhaps, to avoid a similar future for the rest of the Hindus remaining?
I think I think firstly, don't get, I mean, I can't say this to people who are being attacked because, they're facing it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the community at large, don't get bitter
Mm.
and don't lose hope.
Okay.
And thirdly, keep talking and keep writing. Because if you don't document your suffering, your massacre, nobody else will. So you will have to keep talking about it. The pushback has to come from you. There's no one else. You can't expect anyone else to speak for you. You have to do the talking, and
Right.
you have to give the pushback. So and also don't fight among yourselves. Like for instance, I used to have opinions about how a particular narrative is being put out.
Mm-hmm.
I could have thought that, okay, this is too brazen, or this is too, it's not to my taste. I don't do
Mm-hmm.
that anymore, because I believe if somebody is talking about this issue in whatever manner, let that person be. I'll do it in my way. Let the other person do it their way. What is important is that this issue is not being swept under the carpet, and that all of us in some way are talking about it. I think that's more important. So don't fight among yourselves. You may not like a particular person, or the way they're saying it, the way they're narrating the stories of Hindus who are getting persecuted, but that's okay. You do it your way.
Right.
Because if we are divided, you know the community loses. So I think that's very important. Keep talking and don't get cynical, because it's a fight. You have to fight it. So I think that's the lesson I draw for myself, and I hope others do too. Because I used to be critical of other people who sometimes, and I'm sure other people will be critical of me. Now I'm not critical. I'm like, okay, I may not be talking in that fashion, or I may not be writing or documenting that tragedies in that fashion, but I'll do it my way. Let them do it their way. It's fine. What is
As you said.
important is we should not stop doing it. We should do it as best as we can, to the best of our ability. But also, a word of caution, sometimes inadvertently, some of us spread news that is not verified. They're
Mm.
not fact checkers. So if you are called out, and if social media platforms also have a way of deleting your post or saying
Mm.
it's fake news, so be a little cautious, because it's important for the world to know.
True.
So double check what you're saying. Go back to the source. Talk to real people. See what they're saying. If you're a journalist, especially if you're forwarding a video, if you're putting up a video on X or Facebook or Insta, make sure the video is from this time, not from some other time or
Mm.
from some other
Mm.
place. So do a little bit of due diligence when you are narrating somebody's story, because these are very, very important topics to talk about. So don't make it easy for people who want to pull you down. So do a little
Yeah.
bit of due diligence. That's all. That's the only thing. Otherwise, say it the way you want to, whichever way, whichever medium, it's fine. As long as you are committed to the cause, it's fine.
Yeah. I think those are key takeaways, what you mentioned, verify so that, we can retain our credibility when,
Yeah,
especially when we are documenting suffering,
yeah,
it's like immense barbarity, especially. So
yeah,
yeah, better to verify and And also what you mentioned, don't fight amongst yourselves. I think that's
Yeah.
that's very important, especially in times of such tragic loss. And Deepji, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us some of the hard facts and truth, which is often silenced and ignored by the mainstream media. And I also thank you for being the conscience keeper of our society in these challenging times. Thank you very much. Dhanyavad.
Thank you.
Dhanyavad.